Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 1 of Watchmen, the series. This is another, what is it called? First impressions reaction, where I'm checking out a series to see if it's something I might want to react to. And as a first impressions, it's something that I think I might be interested in reacting to, but I want to make sure by trying to react to the first episode, seeing how it goes, and kind of going from there. Possibly putting it in the list for future reactions, or just choosing to watch it on my own, or not at all, whichever ends up being the case. So, let's give some backstory. When I was in high school, I did 2 different things. One, there was this Walgreens within walking distance of my house, and one day I went up there, and they had these like $5 movies, $5-10 movies at Walgreens at that point. I don't know if they still do that. I haven't been to Walgreens in a long time. But they had these like $5-10 movies on sale, and so one of the movies there I saw was a superhero movie, and I decided, you know what, why not? So I bought it, and it was Watchmen. I watched it, and I ended up really enjoying it, though I wouldn't necessarily get all of the intricacies of it until much later down the road, just due to how politically charged and heavy it tends to be. I just thought it was a really interesting superhero film. And I mean, I got some things, of course, but still, because I was like in 11th grade at that point. I then had heard at one point that it was based on a graphic novel, which, not a big surprise for a superhero movie to be based on a existing comic and all. So I wanted to see if my school library had it, because they did have some manga and graphic novels there, and they did. So I borrowed it from the school library, and I read the graphic novel. This was back when I was reading manga and graphic novels. And I was surprised at how accurate it was, the movie. I was surprised at how accurate it was to the original comic, with a few very slight changes, which actually were for the better, honestly. And so recently, in the past, I think this came out in 2019, we got a series based on the Watchmen universe. But this one, instead of following the events of the movie, follow the events of the comic. And I say that specifically because the specifics of the ending of the story in the comic is slightly different than it is in the movie. Just on some specific things. And honestly, again, I think it was better in the movie in terms of that. I think it just made more sense the way they handled the ending in the movie. Because in the comic, there's this like giant like alien creature, and it's just like, where the hell did that come from? It just feels so out of place. And maybe that's supposed to be the point, but it felt too out of place. And that's all replaced in the movie version with more accurate, more story fitting choices. So I know that this series follows the events of the comic instead, so that's going to be interesting. I also know this takes place in the distant future Jeremy Irons apparently portrays Ozymandias, um, or Adrian Veidt from the original story. This is a sequel to the original, so most of the characters we know probably won't be in this. In fact, I'd wager that Adrian is the only one who is from the originals who will be in this. I mean, maybe Dr. Manhattan will be in it. But he'll probably be talked about and maybe even shown like on TVs or something talking about him. But I don't know if he'll actually have a role to play. Obviously, if this follows the original story, Rorschach is dead by this point, so he won't be in it. I really doubt we'll see Silk Spectre or Night Owl. And yeah, I just don't think we're going to cover them. They might be mentioned, they might be talked about, the characters from the original, but outside of Adrian, I really don't know if they're going to actually be here. I kind of doubt it. Now, also to note, in the original story, Adrian's plan at the end succeeds. He is the main villain of the original story. His plan at the end succeeds and he accomplishes what he set out to do. No one was able to stop him. However, Rorschach's journal makes its way to a newspaper publication. And I know that there's something about the series I saw with the advertising for it and everything about some kind of like cult that seems to be taking inspiration from Rorschach. So I'm assuming there may be followers of his journal. And maybe Adrian and others have tried to keep that all hush hush and not publicize what really happened and all the events that really happened back in that time while trying to spin the narrative in their own sake. I'm definitely interested to see how this handles that a big event from the original story while also dealing with its own new characters, its own new dramas, its own new just hero stuff. Because that is a big important thing with the movie and the graphic novel. The hero work and the political side of things are integrated into each other. It's very much in a way, when this story was created, it was created not as a satire necessarily of comic book heroes, but more like kind of breaking down the idealized notion of what a comic book hero would really be like. It's instead taking a more gritty, realistic look at like how heroes would actually be in society. Even to the point of some pretty gruesome stuff. It covers the same thing even with anti-heroes. Like Rorschach could easily be compared to Batman in a lot of ways. It covers the idea of just the extremely overpowered heroes like Superman with characters like Dr. Manhattan. It covers heroes who don't actually have any powers and are just like use like stuff like guns and shit. You have the comparison like with heroes like Punisher and whatnot, but in this you get the comedian and so on. And it shows how a lot of this kind of thing would be actually fucked up and would have a lot of huge issues that come along with it because people are fucked up and have a lot of issues that come with them. Let's be honest, humanity sucks. And that's definitely an overlaying theme in Watchmen. Now, another thing to note is that the comic and original movie had notable sexual situations and notable gore. And I'm wondering if those are going to make their way into this series. Now, this is an HBO series, if I believe right. So it's very possible because Game of Thrones had plenty of that. This is also, at least for now, one season, and I think the plan is that there's not really any plans for a second season, that this is like kind of an isolated story, just kind of following up on the original. So I think for now there's not going to be a second season or anything. I don't think there's that they find a reason to make one. So I'm expecting, no matter what, that this is going to be a pretty complete story. Like, it might leave some things open, like, oh yeah, you could see where this might be going in the future, but that's probably about it. um, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see what they do with this. I've wanted to check this out for quite a while, but just there were other shows that were higher on my list and everything. And I think this could be a possibly good reaction series. So that's why I'm choosing to check it out as a first impressions reaction. And hopefully I like it enough to put it on the list for the future. And as always, if you want to see me continue reacting to these, but don't want to wait whoever knows how long for it to pop up on the list, you can choose these first impressions reaction shows as donation rewards if you want to make sure I get to them, and make sure I get to them quicker. No matter what I say during this, during my afterthoughts and all, you can choose them no matter what. If you really want to see me react to them, basically. And again, want to see me get to them quicker. But either way, I am, like I said, very excited to get to this. Very excited to see how this continues off of the original, and how much of the original's influence will be felt within the story, the violence, the gore, the sexuality, and just the vices that these characters engage in, but also the hero work and all. I'm genuinely curious. So, that being said, let's just get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, this was a very good start. Definitely kept the vibes of the Watchmen I know very much alive, but also modernizing things. So I had to look up a couple things. One, it didn't tell when the current story is taking place in. It was obvious it was more modern day, sometime after the events of the original story and everything. That's pretty much all it mentioned, or all that we could tell. Apparently, it's in 2019. Like, it takes place in 2019. And so, the gist of the story that we can tell is that this cult-like group of Rorschach worshippers, it seems, this cult-like white supremacist Rorschach group apparently took part in or caused something called the White Night that caused it so that all police officers now wear masks over their faces, their lower faces, to hide their identities, and they act in secret not even like telling people as civilians what they are, who they are, and what they do, um, in order to properly stop this supremacist group. The group apparently had some kind of hiatus, is now back, and so working with some masked heroes, they have to take part in this again and stop this supremacist group once and for all, it seems. Our, I presume, main character is this woman we follow throughout this episode, who is a masked vigilante and former cop. And she has this hero persona that apparently is said in the episode to look like a nun, but I don't see it. I do not see the comparison to that at all. She doesn't seem to have any powers, and it seems to be more along the lines of just, a vigilante hero uses guns and whatnot. She's also not afraid to get extremely violent, as we see with the one guy she brought in, who had the links to this group, the 7th Cavalry, or whatever they're called. We also have the chief of police, who's played by Don Johnson, who was in mind is blanking. Oh my god, why can't I think? I know. I mentioned it multiple times too, and my mind is completely blanking. Knives Out. He was in Knives Out. And by the end of this episode, he dies. Now, at the very end, there was a point where I was thinking, like, could he possibly be, like, secretly one of these cultists? But then I was thinking, no, because it looks like they're going after them. But then apparently it was the old man. And now I'm just confused again. So maybe he is, and maybe that's why the old man went after him, but I don't know. It's not really clear. Definitely have to see more to really understand what's going on there. But yeah, we could see definitely some things have been carried over from the original story. There is sexual content in here. There is plenty of gore. This poor moo cows. And a lot of political drama and intensity. It definitely seems like a worthy successor to the original story, and I'm very interested to see where it goes. I think I could react to this series too. I definitely think this is a show that I could react to. Because I feel like having read and watched the source material, the original graphic novel, the classic movie, being familiar with all of that, it's like I do very much understand certain things about what's going on here. Like, I understand when we see Adrian Veidt living in luxury but also in isolation, you kind of understand, at least to a point, why he would be doing that after the events of the original story. And you see a lot of references to heroes from the original story, a lot of references to the events. The raining squids that was like heralded by a warning siren, that's got to be connected to the final events in the original story, right? In the graphic novel specifically, since it was changed for the movie. The alien squid creature, right? It's got to be connected to that. And it's interesting, too, that this group of Rorschach worshippers are white supremacists. Because I never got that vibe from Rorschach. Like, he was a dick. He was a huge dick. He was an asshole, a violent psychopath in a lot of ways. But I don't think he was like heavily bigoted towards anyone outside of just criminals. The only people I think he actually hated were criminals. So why does this white supremacist terrorist group seem to worship him? I'm genuinely curious about this 7th Cavalry and their motivations, their reasonings, their connections with the Rorschach masks and all. I genuinely want to know what's going on here. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. But it's also interesting seeing heroes actually working with officers and stuff, because heroes were outlawed in the events of the original at that time. Like, hero work had become outlawed. Kind of think of it like in the same way of how it was done in The Incredibles. It's very similar to that. So at some point since then, heroes have been brought back, but it seems like they're specifically working with the police force and whatnot, which is interesting. There's just so many questions I'm wondering about. And I think that's the point. You're not supposed to get it all right away. And hell, it might be just like the original, where it's like you need to experience it multiple times to fully understand everything. Like, through reading the graphic novel and seeing the movie multiple times, it took me a few times to really grasp a lot of the stuff that was happening in it. I didn't get it all right away, and I definitely don't get it all right away here. But again, that's probably the point. And also, I might have surprised some of you with a certain word I used during the reaction. And I just want to say, I don't normally use that word, but there's certain situations where it will come out. And only when I'm talking about people who I absolutely view as truly evil and truly just outright, unbelievably horrible. It's the only time I will use that word and the only people I'll use that word against. I'm sorry if it's shocked and confused and offended you in any way. Just keep in mind that I was using it specifically in reference to those white supremacist terrorist fuckwaffles. Like I said, I just about never use it, so I think it even surprised me a little bit when I said it. But it's just, those kind of people piss me off. Racists in general piss me off, but especially people who act on it in such terroristic ways, going out of their way to actively hunt, attack, and kill people because of the color of their skin and shit. It bothers the fuck out of me, and it's like, I don't care if I offend those people. In fact, I actively want to offend those people, and anyone should. Not necessarily using that word, but I'm just saying. Like, you should actively want to do things that will offend white supremacists. You should want to do and say things that will offend sexists. And so on and so forth. If a person is that unbelievably evil, you want to be living a life that will be offensive to them. Because that means you're living a good life. That means you're a good person. because that's what offends white supremacists and sexists and transphobes and homophobes and so on and so forth. They are offended by humanity, by morality, by being a good person. And there's, in my eyes, nothing wrong with cussing someone like that out and calling them terrible things, because they deserve it. But I'm not going to drag on that for too long. As I've said, with this being a first impressions reaction, if you want to see me get back to it sooner, you can do a donation reward. Otherwise, this is being added to my list 100%. This is definitely a series as I said, can see myself actually reacting to, not just enjoying on my own time. I can see myself reacting to it. So I definitely plan to continue doing so at some point in the future. I'll find somewhere on my list I can try to fit it in. I don't know how soon that'll be. Probably not very soon. But like I said, if you want to see me get to it sooner and you are able to and willing to, then feel free to have it as a donation reward. If you're not, then that's fine. Or if you think there's other things you'd rather have as a donation reward, that's also fine. If you can't do a donation reward, that's more than fine. Never feel like I'm trying to force it on you. It's just an option on the channel. It's all optional. But in the meantime, tell me in the comments below what you thought of this first episode of Watchmen, the series, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See you all next time.